It's Ollie Murs. Dance with me tonight on Spirit 102.9. Billows is my name. I'm joined now by Michael Lawrence. He's an English and music teacher and lifelong Cold Chisel fan. He's just wrote his second book on his favourite band. It's called Cold Chisel, Wild Colonial Boys. Now, you've been a fan of Chisel since the early days in the 70s. Tell us about your early memories of the band.
Well, the first time I saw them was back in the late 70s, back in the days when driver's licences didn't have pictures on them, and I was underage and you could sort of borrow someone's driver's licence and get in. I think I was about 16 years old, and they were playing one of the local hotels in the western suburbs of Melbourne. I remember they were all on the next table having a few beers because they hadn't really hit it big yet. They were just trying out the songs for the East album, actually. And I just remember it was an amazing show.
Now, I love rock biographies. I absolutely love reading them. Tell us a little bit about this one that you've wrote.
What really stands out when people read it is just the absolute way the band played 7 nights a week, 50 weeks a year for about 10 years. It's just an extraordinary account. You get almost exhausted reading through it. There's points in there where there's like 20-something nights in a row quite often. That's the usual pattern almost, is, you'll get 20-something nights in a row before they have a night off, and you just think, how can they have worked like that whilst going from, Cairns down through to Adelaide and then, perhaps across to Perth then, and just, travelling enormous distances at the same time, and then keep putting on these shows that were just so intense and exciting that, everybody believed they'd seen the greatest Cold Chisel gig ever, and it might have been, in Adelaide or Broken Hill or somewhere like that, some out-of-the-way place, but they've all got this idea that the one they saw was the best one, and they don't realise that they just played like that all the time. And that's the thing that really comes through when you read it, is you just realise these guys didn't have luck, these guys didn't, make it through some talent show or whatever. They just worked their butts off for about, 10 years, playing everywhere, constantly.
God, I don't even like the thought of working 20 days in a row, and I don't have to scream like Jimmy Barnes every night, so that really is quite amazing.
No, you don't have to travel in a car all day to get to the next place of work either, do you?
God, sounds absolutely exhausting.
Yeah.
Now, this is your second book on Chisel, is that right?
Yep.
What brought you back after your first one, Showtime, was published?
Well, they'd done quite a number of tours since then. They'd done a couple of more albums, and I'd got a lot more material on the earlier stuff as well. I'd gotten quite close to their original bass player, Les Kaczmarek, and he'd told me a lot of stuff, about the real early days of the band. And essentially, look, it just seemed like it was time to do it. Their manager had been on my case since about the Ringside tour to sort of do a follow-up. He used to refer to the first book, Showtime, as the Bible. And, he had it on his desk, and whenever he needed to know something, he'd open it up and find out where they were or who did what or whatever. Sorry, were you...
No, I was just laughing at the fact the guy who was there is keeping your book there as a reference.
Oh, look, I've had at different points of that, different members of the band ring up and say, look, can you tell me when we were in America, or can you tell me when we did this, or how we did that, or could you give me some details on this or that because I want to get a green card, et cetera, et cetera. Ian Moss once told me that, 79 is just a blur to him, he said. A blur of live gigs.
You've obviously know your stuff backwards, but for this book you've been given more access than anyone has ever before to not only the band members but their family, staff, record executives, producers, heaps more. Sounds like a massive task. How'd you go compiling all this information into a book?
Yeah, it was an enormous task. It was everything from bootleg tapes people had recorded at shows, many that I'd recorded myself, in fact, to the management notes on how many people were at different venues and what they got paid to do that show, set lists, diaries. Don Walker had an incredible diary from 1975 that, talked about all the things that happened that year and when they were auditioning singers and when Steve left and when Jim left and joined Fraternity and how they auditioned new singers to replace him and how they convinced, just all this little day-to-day detail, what days they recorded, what rehearsed what songs and things like that, an incredible day-to-day thing. And then I combined that with, as I said, the manager's stuff and tapes and things, and I even had access to demo tapes and things like that from different albums and so on. Just an incredible amount of material. So the obvious thing to do is to put it all together in some sort of chronological thing, and essentially then people can look at it and follow their favourite songs, their favourite gigs, their favourite albums, find out what the history of that was, how that fits with this, and et cetera, et cetera.
It sounds absolutely fantastic. The book's Cold Chisel, Wild Colonial Boys, and the author is Michael Lawrence. It is the Bible on Cold Chisel. all, mate, where can we get the book?
Look, all the good bookshops have got it. Your Dimmicks, your Kmarts, your Big W's, etc., all those places have got it.
You can also get online at melbournebooks.com.au. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Lawrence.
No worries. Thank you.
Still to come before the end of the hour, I got Santana on the way on the Spirit.
Want to wake up with Adrian Barrett this weekend?